Yesterday someone warned me. Today I opened my account and it was gone. September 2022. Rating 700. Ego somehow intact. I want you guys to understand what 700 actually looks like from the inside. It looks like losing to people who are losing to everyone else. It looks like hanging your queen in just 6 moves and telling yourself it was a mouse slip. It was not a mouse slip. I played, I stopped, I came back, I stopped again. Chess does that to you. It doesn't let go you cleanly. Every time I tried to quit, some position would just stick in my head. Some game I lost that I knew I could have won, and still I would open that app again. That's not dedication, that's something closer to a grudge. I had a grudge against this game for 2-3 years, but then something shifted. About a month ago, I made a decision, not a new year, new me decision, not a hype decision, just a quiet one. The kind you make when you're done negotiating with yourself. I was sitting at 2200 ELO, which for context is already a place most players never reach. And I thought, what if I actually went for it? What if I stopped treating my ceiling like a comfort zone? I started streaming daily live on YouTube and I called the journey to 3000. And I want you to understand what that means. What it means to announce a destination that publicly at a rating that far away to an audience that is watching in real time. That is not the move of someone trying to hide something. You don't live stream a journey to 3000 and cheat. That's not how any of this works. If you're cheating, you don't turn on the cameras. The chat grew. People started tuning in not just for chess but for the chase. Because watching someone genuinely improve in real time is one of the most compelling things you can put on a screen. In just 30 days, my rating went from 2200 ELO to 2550 ELO. 350 rating points jump in 30 days, on stream in front of everyone. I didn't think it was controversial. I just thought it was a story. Yesterday someone messaged me, they said there was a Reddit thread, a thread where people were mass reporting my account. Coordinated, organized, because of the 350 points in 30 days. I haven't seen this thread, I want to be clear about that. I went looking and I haven't found it. Maybe it exists. Maybe the person was wrong. Maybe it's somewhere I didn't search. But here's what I do know. 12 hours later, I opened my account and it was gone. Fair play violation, account closed. I sat there, stared at the screen. And the first thought that I had, the very first thought, wasn't anger. It was confusion. Because I had streamed every single game, the evidence of my improvement wasn't hidden in some private match history. It was on YouTube. Timestamped, with chat, with my face on camera, with me explaining my thought process out loud in real time, drawing arrows on chessboard, explaining all the ideas I had behind every single variation of chess that I made. I had documented my own growth more thoroughly than almost anyone, and it still wasn't enough. Let me talk about what's actually happening here because I think it matters. Online chess right now has a cheating crisis. It's real, it's serious, it's documented. And the fair play systems that platforms use are sophisticated. Machine learning, statistical deviation, engine correlation. They are not guessing. But here's the thing about statistical systems. They are trained on averages. And by definition, outliers look like anomalies. Someone improving 350 points in just 30 days is an outlier. I know that, everyone knows that. But outliers exist. That's literally what the word means. Magnus Carlsen existed. Every prodigy in history was statistically an anomaly. The system doesn't know I spent 2 years grinding this game on and off, building pattern recognition that hadn't fully converted to rating yet. The system doesn't know that I was studying chess seriously behind the screen. The system doesn't know I was streaming and talking through positions out loud, which by the way is quite the opposite of what you do when you're getting outside help. The system just sees the numbers and the numbers look fast. And maybe it's right. I have to be honest, I cannot argue with the data I haven't seen. I don't have access to what they flagged. I don't know which games triggered it. I don't know if the mass reporting influenced the review. I genuinely don't know. What I do know is what I felt playing those games. What I know is that I was there, inside those positions, thinking, calculating, getting it right, getting it wrong, and adjusting my gameplay accordingly. Whether that's enough, I'll let you decide. Now here's what they don't account for. 2,000 people subscribed to me in 1 month. Thousands of people showed up to watch someone chase an impossible number. So many people send me messages like, bro, this is actually insane. You are actually gonna do it. And that I have been watching your stream every day, asking me advices how to improve chess. Those people woke up today and my stream wasn't there and my account was gone. I don't know how to explain what that feels like, to have built something small but real, with real people who are genuinely invested, and then have it go quiet overnight. Not because I stopped, not because I quit, because of a red banner. I started this journey at 700 rating. 700. I've lost more games than most people have played. I've closed this app in frustration more times than I can count. I have come back when I had every reason not to. The people who reported me, whoever they are, if that thread is even real, they don't know any of that. They saw a number that didn't look right to them and they decided to act on it. And maybe they thought they were doing the right thing. Maybe they were. That's the part that keeps me up. Not the anger, but the maybe. There is something uniquely brutal about being doubted at the exact moment when you are finally believing in yourself. I have been thinking about September 2022. That 700 rated version of me, he had no idea that any of this would happen. He had no idea I would reach 2200 ELO. He had no idea he would start streaming. No idea he would grow a community, even a small one. No idea he would reach 2550 ELO. And no idea that he would get banned at the exact moment when it was all coming together. Just taught me something I keep forgetting and keep relearning. You can do everything right, and the position can still be lost. That's not unfairness, that's just chess. That might also just be life. I'm not going to sit here and perform devastation for views. I'm not going to cry on camera. I'm not going to write a thread about it. I'm just going to show you 2 games which I played against title players with high accuracy. Of course, I won those 2 games. And you guys will be the decider of how that game looked. I'll show you everything, the timestamps behind every single move, the idea which was going through my mind before making a move. Okay, so let's start with this first game now. Now this is the game which I played against this FM from Uzbekistan with an accuracy of 99.1. My opponent had an accuracy of 90.8. Now obviously 99.1 accuracy might look suspicious against an FM especially. But I'm gonna walk you through this game and show you how logical every single move was. The game started with e4. I played c6. I'm a Caro-Kann player. I have said this on stream so many times that with white I play Queen's Gambit and with black I play Caro-Kann against d4. My opponent went for d4. I played the move d5, takes, develop his knight. I develop my knight. He developed his bishop. I developed my knight. Every single thing right now is a book move by him and by me. He then castled and then I put my bishop on g4 to pin his knight to the queen. He pushed this pawn to protect this pawn, otherwise he would have lost this pawn like this. I pushed my pawn on e6 to protect this pawn on d5 and create this beautiful pawn chain. My opponent pawn pushed h3 to kick my bishop. I move my bishop back to h5 and then he developed his bishop on f4. I develop my bishop on d6 and after takes, it's a completely normal position. It's just my opponent has slight advantage than me, but it's only because he is white. And if you notice till now, I only spent 11 seconds in the opening. Why? Because I have played this variation so many times than I can count. I generally know what my opponent is going to play in this case. My opponent, however, spent more than a minute for this opening. So yeah, just every single move which I made was only 1 or 2 seconds long in the opening. Look, 3 seconds, and then 55, 54, 52, 51. Look, every single move was 1 or 2 seconds at best in the opening. And then after that I castle. It's 11th move now and I castled and I only spent 13 seconds in the opening. He placed his rook on the semi-open file. Now, after which I push my pawn on a6. I usually like to push my pawn on a6 and then b5, bring my knight on a5 and then my knight on c4. Because if he takes, I take back with this pawn on b5 and then bring my rook on b8, attacking this pawn for future purposes. I played this variation so many times, like I said. Now, according to computer, the best move was to play knight e7, but like I said, I like pushing my pawns on the this minority pawn push. My opponent played pawn a3, which allowed me to play b5 because now he cannot push his pawn like this. Otherwise, that would just be a waste of move. He brought his knight like this, obviously trying to put his knight on g3 so that I can move my bishop on g6 or either take the knight. Like I said, I moved my knight on a5, not the best move again, and according to computer, it was b8 and then pawn push. But like I said, I like to put my knight on c4 because if he takes, I get this semi-open file for my rook, which is so beneficial for me in a lot of cases. My opponent jumped his knight on g3, attacking my bishop. Now I can either take or drop my bishop on g6. According to computer, it was to take the knight, but I decided to drop my bishop on g6. My opponent played knight e5, which is a completely logical move to attack my bishop again. So I decided to take his bishop. He took with the queen, and then I placed my knight on c4. So every single idea which I had to pawn push like this on this side of the board and then putting my knight from a5 to c4 has finally been accomplished. And if you will notice, I only spent a minute in the first 15-16 moves. However, my opponent spent a lot of time. He brought his rook here on e2, thinking of going rook e8 and doubling up this rook structure. I pushed my pawns, which again is not the best move, by the way. I wanted to push my pawn like this and get my rooks on this side of the board, on the open files. My opponent played pawn f4, which is apparently an inaccuracy because it does allow me to put my knight in future on e4. Obviously, I cannot go my knight on e4 right now because he just takes, and I will lose a pawn in the middle of the board. Like I said, I knocked on his door by pushing my pawn on b4, which again was not a best move, but I wanted to open up the positions. He took my rook, I took his rook, and then there he made a mistake. He took this pawn, which was apparently a huge mistake by him. He was thinking that he will ruin my pawn structure sort of and win a pawn in the end. But he forgot that I can just take this pawn after pawn takes this, which I took. I attack his queen, and then he took my pawn, which is the only move, the best move which he could have made. After that, I took this pawn, and look at this position of mine. Every single thing is so well placed. Also, look at the time, by the way, guys. Look at the time. It's 6 minutes. It's not like I played every single move instantly, and it wasn't like I was thinking way too much, which is obviously a good thing. So yeah, for this idea which I said, pushing my pawns on this side of the board, I spent some time because I was thinking of take 6, like will I lose my pawn or not? And that's why I spent a little bit of time there. And after I took my rook, attack his queen, I took this pawn on f4, which is completely free pawn. There's no back rank checks that can happen in this position. And now he made a huge mistake. He brought his queen here, blundering this check on the king. He made this huge mistake, which I capitalized. It was the only great move. I mean, the thing is, anyone can make this move. It's not like it's a complex move to play. Your rook is under attack. How do you move the rook? Well, by gaining a tempo move. So I brought my rook on a1, giving him a check, and now his knight is pinned. Now the second tempo move, what is it? I have to protect my back rank. So how do I protect my back rank? By pushing my pawn. And what other threat does pushing the pawn does? Well, it threatens to win the knight. Because if I get pawn h5, pawn h4, his knight is just gone because the knight is pinned. I pushed my pawn on h5. He brought his queen on f3, which I knew he would play this to trade off the queens. And I brought my queen on b8 to keep this pin. I obviously would not have gone anywhere else. Why? Because I would simply just lose a pawn. I brought my queen on b8 to keep this pin on the knight, he brought his rook on e5. Now, if you watch a live stream, so many people were saying, I was thinking of it, I said that if he plays h4, let's say in case, there's a checkmate incoming, check. And if he doesn't take my knight, there's actually a checkmate. Let's say if he moves his king on h3, there's rook check, knight takes, and then queen checkmate. And many people in the stream actually said that there is no checkmate right now. But I just told them that you can actually sacrifice your rook on the h file. The king has no place to go. He will have to take the rook with the knight. And after that, this is checkmate. My queen is protected by my knight, and this is just game over for my opponent. However, my opponent went for rook here, and then I pawn push like this. Why I pawn push my pawn on h4? To pin his rook next. Because the thing is, he cannot move his king anywhere. My rook is on this rank. His king cannot get out of this pin. This long diagonal which I am putting pin on, his king cannot simply come out of this pin easily. He brought his knight here, which was the only option, one of the only options that he could have made. He took my knight, and then I pawn push on f6. Pinning his rook, because the rook is pinned, the rook cannot move anywhere. And in the next move, I took the rook. He took my pawn with a check. I brought my king back to safety. He pushed his pawn. Why? Because let's say he just takes, right? I'll just bring my rook on e1 and then win this pawn again. So he pushed his pawn, which doesn't matter much. I gave him a check. He pushed his pawn, and then I brought rook on d1 and he just resigned. Now, I'll ask you guys one thing. Was any of my moves which I made so complex? Was there any big brain idea behind any single move? I mean, I will just go through this game again. Also, look at my time if you want. All of these moves which I made, I have played this variation thousands of times till now. Every single thing in Caro-Kann I know now. He brought his rook, I brought my pawn, pushed my pawn structure, I explained every single thing. And then I brought my bishop on g6. I took the bishop, put my knight here, which I said so many times that I like putting my knight here, so that if he takes, just in case, I get this semi-open file for my rook. And this pawn is a huge weakness for my opponent for future. He took my rook, and then here's the exact thing where he actually made a mistake. By taking my knight first, hanging this pawn on f4, not just hanging the pawn, hanging the knight as well. His knight is also hanging now, which he thought that if he could attack my rook, and if I take the knight, obviously this is checkmate. Let's say if I take my knight, this is just checkmate, right? But there's also a check which I can make in this position. And after his king moved to h2, I just gain another tempo move, pushing the pawn and trying to win this knight like this, because the knight is pinned. I brought back my queen, and he played rook here. Like I said again, if you pawn push, this is just checkmate. Or he can push his pawn, but he will have to give his queen back. So obviously my opponent didn't want to blunder his queen. He played rook e5. I removed his knight so that his rook can be pinned finally. Took his knight, and then I won the rook. So every single move which I made was all just simple moves, all logical moves. There was nothing suspicious about these moves. Also, if you watch my stream, I was explaining every single move. And like I said, if you can watch the timestamps as I play the moves. Now, the second game which I played was against the CM with an accuracy of 96.1. My opponent had an accuracy of 82.9. Again, a high accuracy against title player. How can someone untitled play such a good move against title players? Well, let me show you this game again. And also follow the timestamps as I play the moves. In this game as well, I was black. My opponent played e4. I went for c6. Like I said, I am a Caro-Kann player. My opponent developed his knight. I took the pawn, which all of these are book moves. And I played knight f6, after which my opponent played queen e2. And I've said this on streams a lot of times that I don't like this variation much. Now, taking the knight is usually the best move, but I like to bring my bishop on f5 first. And my opponent should have taken this knight. So when my opponent brought his knight back, I was kind of shocked. And I did miss this move. I won't deny, I did miss this free pawn. Which, by the way, will not happen if you are using engine, right? I did miss this free pawn, of course. I brought my bishop back on g6, and if you watch my stream, I did say that, oh, I missed this pawn later on. Right after I made this move, I instantly just realized that, oh, I could have taken this pawn. This was a completely free pawn. My opponent played d4, completely logical move. I push my pawn on e6 so that he doesn't keep on pushing like this. Also to bring my bishop, to develop my bishop. Now my opponent is starting pushing his pawns on h4 to put my bishop in sort of an ugly spot. He pushed his pawn on c3 so that his queen is not like kind of attached to this pawn forever, because obviously this pawn is under attack. I developed my bishop on d6, which is not a great move, but I feel like it's an okay move. I put my bishop on h7, which obviously this is the only move which I can make in this position, because if I play something else, he will just takes, and then I'll lose this pawn on e6 with a check. So I dropped my bishop on h7. He brought his knight. I took, he took, and then I castle. All logical move again. Now, he played an inaccuracy by bringing his bishop on e2. He should have played his bishop here, and after takes, he can take back with a knight. Maybe reroute his knight somewhere else, or maybe play bishop f5, f4, trading out the dark squares bishops. Now, after this move, I brought my knight on d7, trying to trade off the knights. He castled, which apparently is a mistake, and I took his knight. He took back with the pawn, and I put my bishop on g6 first, again gaining a tempo move. Why? Because after he moved his queen, he loses his pawn, which he missed. Now he's simply down a pawn. Again, all of it was just simple calculation. You take the knight first, you attack the queen. He has no other option of how to protect this pawn. So he had to move back, after which I took. He developed his bishop. I brought my queen on c7 because obviously he's trying to play rook here. But here he pushed his pawn, which I feel like was a mistake. I said in the stream as well that feels like a mistake to me. Why? Because this diagonal has just become so weak. Like, look at his pawn structure. The king is super weak because he has pushed his pawns way too much. Now, second tempo move which I made in this position was first drop back my bishop and then play bishop here. Now, according to computer, it's not the best move. It's a good move. According to computer wanted to play bishop on e4, but bishop on f5, I feel like it's like a more logical move, more human move to play. He brought his queen back on f3, after which I brought my rook. Again, I should have brought my other rook into the board, but I played this rook, which is fine move. Now he's threatening to capture this pawn, by the way. He's simply threatening to capture the pawn. I can pawn push like this, but again, it's the best move. But I've set up a trap. And what was the trap? I played bishop e7. Now, why is bishop e7 a trap? Well, after he takes, first of all, I cannot trap his bishop like this, because then I just not only just lose 2 pawns, but also go on to lose this rook. So instead, my trap was basically like, after he takes, I push my pawn on c5. He takes, I takes. Simple as that. And if he would have moved his pawn like this, thinking of trading off, I will just play pawn b6. And if in case he takes this, there's bishop takes c5, pinning his queen, not even taking the bishop, by the way. So anyways, he didn't fall for that trap of pawn takes this and then pawn push c5. This clearly is a poison pawn. He put his bishop on f3, which is again a logical move according to computer. Computer wanted to play d1, but bishop here feels like more natural move. And then he pawn push like this, which creates a huge weakness on the king's side. I mean, look at the king's side. It's super weak. I brought my bishop on d3 to attack the rook, gaining a tempo again. He brought his rook on e1, the best move. And then I played bishop on d6, attacking this pawn. He moved his bishop from out of the way, protecting this pawn. After which I pushed my pawn. Not the best move. According to computer, was to go here. But I felt like opening the position might help me because his king is already super weak. He took, I took, attacking my pawn, which I protected by pushing my pawn like this. And then here he played g5, which is the best move, attacking my king side. Maybe in future getting the king out of the way, and like rook here, bringing in the rooks into the game. Again the tempo move again by bishop to g3, attacking the rook again. He took my pawn, which is apparently a best move. I thought while I was streaming, I was thinking maybe it's not the best move because he just hangs the rook, which I took. He took my pawn, which is not the best move. He played he should have taken my rook first. I mean my bishop first. I brought my rook on e8, attacking his bishop. He took my bishop, and then I played this move. After which my opponent made a mistake like this. My opponent should have gone g4. Why my opponent should have gone g4? To prevent my queen from coming into g3 square. But instead, he played queen to f6, which computer might show it's a good move, but it's not a good move, because this allows me to play queen g3, and now his bishop is pinned. And here he made a blunder. It's not just an inaccuracy; it's just completely lost now. It's a blunder. I said in the stream that the only way he can prevent this position is to play something like queen to f2, which is the best move. I said it on the stream as well. But instead, my opponent made a huge blunder by playing rook to e2, allowing this check. Now, according to computer, even the check, according to computer, taking the bishop is the best move, which is, I mean, I don't know. I feel like giving the check is more logical move, right? And here he just resigned. Why? Because I just take back. The bishop cannot protect. He will have to protect with a queen, and this is just checkmate. So, anyways, this was a game which I played, and this also had a high accuracy of 96.1. But I want to ask you guys, were these two games so suspicious, or any of my game genuinely? Because I don't think so. I think anyone can make these moves. Now, while I wait for chess.com to unban me, I'm just going to keep studying chess, because the positions I have learned don't disappear when an account does. The rating is gone, but the chess is still in me. I'll make a new account from 0 ELO and start the journey to 3000 again, because the journey to 3000 isn't over yet. It's just been rerouted. And honestly, maybe starting at 0 again publicly is the most interesting story I could tell. More interesting than a clean rise. More honest than a perfect arc. The most compelling chess games aren't the ones where someone dominates from move 1. They are the ones where someone survives a losing position long enough to find the only move that matters. I'm still looking for that move. If you were in those streams, I genuinely want to thank you guys from the bottom of my heart. And if you're new here because of this video, welcome. The journey to 3000 resumes from tomorrow.